Alright guys, this is chapter 13 of the True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle. This is the beginning of part 2 in the True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle, part 2. So we're picking up, she's just gone in to talk to Fisk to tell him she's going to be a part of the crew. And we're going to find out what happens with that. Now, I don't have any of my fancy recording equipment, my laptop, or anything like that tonight. So I'm just doing this on the iPad. And so you're going to have to listen carefully when I tell you things to write down in your journal. Okay, there are things that you have to write down in your journal, but you're just going to have to listen to what I ask you to do. Okay? So, here we go. For a second time, I stood in the forecastle. The room was as dark and mean as when I'd first seen it. Now, however, I stood as a petitioner in sailor's garb. A glum Fisk was at my side. It hadn't been easy to convince him I was in earnest about becoming one of the crew, even when he begrudged a willingness to believe in my sincerity. He warned that agreement from the rest of the men would be improbable. He insisted I lay the matter before them immediately. So it was that 3 men from Mr. Hollybrass's watch, Grimes, Dillingham, and Foley, were the next to hear my plea. As Fisk had foretold, they were contemplating me and my proposal with very little evidence of favor, meaning they didn't really agree with it. I do mean it, I said, finding boldness with repetition. I want to be the replacement for Mr. Johnson. You're a girl, Dillingham spat out contemptuously. A pretty girl, Foley put in. It was not meant as a compliment. It takes more than canvas bridges to hide that. And a gentlewoman, was Grimes' addition, as though that was the final evidence of my essential uselessness. So basically saying, yeah, you're a girl. Girls can't do anything on the ship. Sorry. I want to show that I stand with you, I pleaded, that I made a mistake. A mistake? Foley snapped. 2 able-bodied men have died. Besides, Dillingham agreed, you'll bring more trouble than good. You can teach me, I offered. God's fist, Grimes cried. She thinks this is a school. And the captain, Foley asked, what'll he say? He wants nothing to do with me, I replied. That's what he says, but you were his darling girl, Miss Doyle. We takes you in and he'll want you back again. Where will that put us? So it went round and round, while the men made objections, while I struggled to answer them. Fisk said nothing. Though I tried to keep my head up, my eyes steady, it was not easy. They looked at me as if I were some loathsome thing. At the same time, the more objections they made, the more determined I was to prove myself. See here, Miss Doyle, Dillingham concluded, it's no simple matter. Understand, you sign on to the articles, so to speak, and you are on. No bolting to safe harbors at the first blow or when an ill word is flung your way. You're a hand or you're not a hand. And it won't go easy. That's all that can ever be promised. So he's saying, like, either you're in or you're out. You can't back out at the last second. I know, I said. Hold out your hands, he demanded. Fisk nudged me. I held them out, palms up. Foley peered over them. Like bloody cream, he said with disgust. Touch mine, he insisted, and extended his. Gingerly, I touched one of them. His skin was like rough leather. That's the hands you'd get, miss, like an animal. Is that what you want? I don't care, I said stoutly. So, like, I told you this a little bit before, that people who work with their hands, like my brother, he does construction, and so he's got calluses on a lot of his hands because he just works with them all the time. And so a lot of people who do construction or auto repair, or anything where you're working with your hands a lot, um, you develop those calluses on your hands just from the hard work. And so someone who doesn't do that, someone who, or farmer, they develop a lot of calluses on their hands because they work with their hands every day, all day. But then you have people who don't work with their hands all the time, and their hands are really, really soft. And they're saying that if Charlotte does all this work, her hands are going to get really, really rough. Finally, it was Dillingham who said, "And are you willing to take your place in the rigging too, fair weather or foul?" That made me pause. Fisk caught the hesitation. "Answer," he prompted. "Yes," I said boldly. They exchanged glances. Then Foley asked, "What do the others think?" Fisk shook his head and sighed. "No doubt they'll speak the same." Suddenly Grimes said, "Here's what I say. Let her climb to the royal yard. If she does it and comes down whole and still is willing to serve, then I say let her sign and be bloody damned like the rest of us. And do whatever she's called to do. No less." With no more than grunts, the men seemed to agree among themselves. They turned toward me. "Now, what does Miss Doyle say?" Grimes demanded. I swallowed hard, but all the same I gave yet another "Yes." Foley came to his feet. "All right then, I'll go caucus the others," which means he's going to go survey them. Just ask everyone, do you agree to let Charlotte join the crew, or do you not? And out he went. Fisk and I retreated to the galley, while I waited for word. During that time he questioned me regarding my determination. "Miss Doyle," he pressed, "you have agreed to climb to the top of the royal yard. Do you know that's the highest sail on the main mast? 130 feet up. You can reach it only two ways. You can shimmy up the mast itself, or you can climb the shrouds using the ratlines for your ladder." I nodded as if I fully grasped what he was saying. The truth was, I didn't even wish to listen. I just wanted to get past the test. So she's going to climb 130 feet in the air. "And Miss Doyle," he went on, "if you slip and fall, you'll be lucky to drop into the sea and drown quickly. No mortal could pluck you out fast enough to save you. Do you understand that?" I swallowed hard but nodded. "Yes." "Because if you're not lucky, you'll crash to the deck, fall that way, and you'll either maim or kill yourself by breaking your neck. Still certain?" "Yes," I repeated, though somewhat more softly. So, no big deal. You know, if you climb up there, if you're lucky, you'll fall in the ocean and drown really quickly. If you're not lucky, then you're going to fall and hit the deck and either die or, have a broken back, bones, legs, arms. Just be completely broken. No big deal, but I'm sure you'll be fine. "I'll give you this," he said with a look that seemed a mix of admiration and contempt. "Zachariah was right. You're as steady a girl as I've ever met." Foley soon returned. "We're agreed," he announced. "Not a one stands in favor of your signing on, Miss Doyle. Not with what you are. We're all agreed to that. But if you climb as high as the royal yard and make it down whole, and if you still want to sign on, you can come as equal. You'll get no more from us, Miss Doyle, but no less either." So after all this, after the way Charlotte treats them like you're not on my level and all that, their response is, "Hey, you want to join the crew? You do this. You're going to be one of us. You're going to be on our level." They don't have a problem with it. They're not being uptight about it. They're just saying, "You know what? You do it? Sure, you're on our level." Fisk looked at me for my answer. "I understand," I said. "All right then," Foley said. "The captain's still in his cabin and not likely to come out till 5 bells. You can do it now." "Now?" I quailed. "Now before never." So it was that the 4 men escorted me onto the deck. There I found that the rest of the crew had already gathered. Having fully committed myself, I was overwhelmed by my audacity. The masts had always seemed tall, of course, but never so tall as they did at that moment. When I reached the deck and looked up, my courage all but crumbled. My stomach turned. My legs grew weak. Not that it mattered. Fisk escorted me to the mast as though I were being led to die at the stake. He seemed as grim as I. To grasp fully what I'd undertaken to do, know again that the height of the mainmast towered 130 feet from the deck. This mast was in fact 3 great rounded links of wood, trees in truth, affixed one to the end of the other. Further, it supported 4 levels of sails, each of which bore a different name. In order, bottom to top, these were called the main yard, topsail, top gallant, and finally the royal yard. I don't know if you can see that here, but as I told you before, I draw a lot of pictures in my book. So you've got the bottom one is the main yard, the topsail, the top gallant, and the royal yard. Okay, so these are 4 different masts, 4 different sails that she's going to climb past. And if you want a better picture of it, if you look at the back of your book, there is this diagram of the ship. So I'd look at that to give you a better idea of what she's climbing up into. My task was to climb to the top of the royal yard and come down in one piece. If I succeeded, I gained the opportunity of making the climb 50 times a day. Now, right now, I want you to pause the video and write down in your journal. This will be another diary entry from Charlotte's perspective. Dear diary, and then tell what the plan is. What is she supposed to do to join the crew? I'll wait. Will you pause the video? Alright, hopefully you're finished with the first part of your letter. As if reading my terrified thoughts, Fisk inquired gravely, "How we go, Miss Doyle? Up the mast or on the ratlines?" Once again I looked up. I could not possibly climb the mast directly. The stays and shrouds with their ratlines would serve me better. "Ratlines," I replied softly. "Then up you go." I will confess it, at that moment my nerves failed. I found myself unable to move. With thudding heart, I looked frantically around. The members of the crew, arranged in a crescent, were standing like death's own jury. It was Barlow who called out, "A blessing goes with you, Miss Doyle." To which Ewing added, "And this advice, Miss Doyle, keep your eyes steady on the ropes. Don't you look down or up." For the first time, I sensed that some of them, at least, wanted me to succeed. The realization gave me courage. So they're starting to accept the fact that she might be one of the crew, and so they're cheering her on. They're like, "Hey, come on, if you can do this, you can be one of us. So you can do it." And they're giving her tips and tricks. With halting steps and shallow breath, I approached the rail, only to pause when I reached it. I could hear a small inner voice crying, "Don't, don't, don't!" But it was also then that I heard Dillingham snicker, "She'll not have the stomach." Kind of like a, "Psh, she's a girl, she can't do it." I reached up, grasped the lowest deadeye, and hauled myself atop the rail. That much I had done before. Now I maneuvered to the outside so that I would be leaning into the rigging, and could even rest on it. Once again I looked at the crew, down at them, I should say. They were staring up with blank expressions. Recollecting Ewing's advice, I shifted my eyes and focused them on the ropes before me. Then, reaching as high as I could into one of the middle shrouds and grabbing a ratline, I began to climb. The ratlines were set about 16 inches one above the other, so that the steps I had to take were wide for me. I needed to pull as much with my arms as climb with my legs. But line by line I did go up, as if ascending an enormous ladder. After I had risen maybe 17 feet, I realized I'd made a great mistake. The rigging stood in sets, each going to a different level of the mast. I could have taken one that stretched directly to the top. Instead, I had chosen a line which went only to the first trestle tree to the top of the lower mast. For a moment I considered backing down and starting afresh. I stole a quick glance below. The crew's faces were turned up toward me. I understood that they would take the smallest movement down as retreat. I had to continue. So, like, remember, you look at the picture again. Now, there's one ladder that goes all the way up to the top. But instead, she accidentally took the ladder that goes up to this one. Then she has to switch over to another ladder that climbs to the next level, switch over, climb to the next level. Instead of doing the one easy one, she's got it's the transitions that are tough.